there, welcome back to another show. This is an extra special one, which is a response to what Ronan did, who was responding to someone else did. They did a thing called the one film per year for the year 2000, the best one of the year, or your favourite one of the year 2000s. You know, I thought, well, that's obvious, and they did a runners-up as well, or some runners-up. I thought that's kind of obvious. What actually defines a year? It's not the best, it's the most mediocre. It's the films that are so mediocre, or so kind of dull, that they make you think they're the worst films of the year, when they're not. They've got professionalism, they've got, like, skilled technicians, but they've also got, like, no passion, no ambition, no nothing. And you end up leaving the film, hating the film so much, because of the complete lack of engagement within the film. So that's what I'm doing this on. It's basically the films that are the most mediocre of the year, but in a lot of cases they feel they're the worst films of the year. They feel worse than the films that are incompetent, that are on lower budget. Because lower budget films that are incompetent have a certain charm to them. They're more entertaining than these ones, which are big budget, they've been promoted to hell, and you expect something from them. And a lot of time they really do get the thing of, this is the worst film of the year because I'm angry with it. When it's like, it's not the worst film of the year, it's the most boring film of the year. It's the one that's like, how did you make this with all the resources you've got? How did it turn out to be so boring? How is it so disappointing? Because of just lack of interest and lack of ambition and lack of skill, despite like massive resources. So all of these films have resources behind them. They all should have had a good shot of being good, but it turned out to be so mediocre that there's a good chance you'd hate most of them. Most of these films you would not watch if you had a choice. So, and I've included films by people who I like, but who have made some boring films. So it's not just like I'll just go and do the guilty parties. There are directors I like who made some of these films. So here we go. So starting in 2000, the most mediocre film I could think of was How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which had lots of effects and they were all gaudy as hell, and there was no real story, which is a very simple story. Should have been easy to do, and somehow they messed it up and made something absolutely horrible and mediocre. And that's the thing, is the Grinch should not be mediocre. And ever since Chuck Jones did it, every other version has been mediocre. How do you make the Grinch mediocre? So I've limited myself to this one version. But it's incredibly mediocre, and you would never really... It would be on, you'd go, nah, I won't bother. I'll watch the cartoon version. The runner-up for this year, for 2000, is The Perfect Storm. Do we all remember that one? Probably not, because it's boring. Based on a real-life story, fascinating idea. These guys go out fishing, and because they're professional fishermen, a storm hits, and they can't get home. They have to go through the storm to try and get home, and tragedy happens. It's a real life tragedy and made the most boring film. They cast a lot of big stars like George Clooney, Matt Wahlberg and things. A lot of supporting actors who are well known, and they made one of the most tedious films possible out of it. This is from Wolfgang Peterson, who made a lot of tedious films and big budgets. So this is not his only one, but that's the one I'm bringing up because it was especially bad because it should have been good. It's like, how could you make a bad film or a mediocre film out of this? He managed to find a way. Okay, for 2001, we go to The Mummy Returns. Blandness Incorporate. This is a film that just wanders from one set piece to the next without much passion or sense, or it's got an annoying child character. I mean, I wasn't a fan of the first Mummy film, but it's painless compared to this one. And compared to the other ones that followed, I mean, the Mummy films could have been... there could have been quite a lot in this list, but I stuck into Mummy Returns. There's... You know... It's like one of those things. I know people who love these films, but I don't get them. Give me Boris Karloff any day. Give me the Hammer Mummy films. They've got passion. They've got real craftsmanship. and they've done a much lower budget than this. All the money and they just not much of a story. The runner-up is Pearl Harbor, which was hated, is cheesy as hell, but again, it had a mega budget behind it, and it had decent actors. And in fact, it was just mediocre. Yeah, the love story was cringe, but a lot of the action stuff was good, but it was uninvolving and boring, because by the time you got to Pearl Harbor happening, you were so uninvolved because of the characters and the writing and direction that it was like a big nothing. It was like the perfect storm. This should have been a good film because it's based on a real life event, a real life tragedy, and it was Hollywoodized up, and it's like, nah, you can't do that. So that one, no. But Mummy Returns felt blander. So that's why Mummy Returns won. 2002, Possession by Neil LaBute, which is an adaptation of a A.S. Byatt novel, which is a terrific novel. The film is absolutely tedious and boring. It's professional, but it's boring. It's really boring, and the modern day love story in it is so awful and so just put me to sleep bad. The historical love story is a bit better because of the acting's better than that one, but still, the adaptation was so bad and so mediocre for something that really was an excellent book. It always jumps out at me as being one of the most mediocre films you could possibly do from a great material. The runner-up is Triple X, the Vin Diesel film. Again, another one is an epitome of tediousness with lots of money involved. You know, I actually like the sequels more than this one. The sequels are incredibly stupid and mind-numbingly stupid, but they are enjoyable for how stupid they are. They go that extra mile to make it enjoyably dumb, or enjoyable. I can't believe someone's getting paid to do this. This one's boring. The ultimate insult. This is mediocre. It's technically the best of the three, but it's somehow the most boring of the three. Right, 2003, The Last Samurai, another one where historical subject matter, the samurai, Legend of the Samurai, they throw in a movie star Tom Cruise into the middle of it, and they make this bland thing about a guy appreciating a new culture. They've done it before in Yakuza and The Challenger and things like that, done it better in those films. This one, it's just mainly because it's like, they have a white guy in the middle of a story, it's not a white guy story, and it's like, it's just annoying. This is one of the better films in this list, actually. It's not offensively bad, but it is mediocre when it should have really flew. That's the kind of big thing away from this one, is like, it should have been so much better than what it was, and it becomes like just blah. The runner-up is Dreamcatcher, which has a reputation for being a really bad film. It's not, it's mediocre. That's why you think it's bad, because it's like all this talent and a good director, and what you get is this film where none of the scenes really gel together. Everyone's been professional, but everyone's been a bit boring, and there's a couple of bad ideas in it, but mainly it's for a film is this batshit insane that should be a pure camp classic. It's a tedious sit through. It's really dull. It's like, you know, this should have been a great bad film. People say it's a great bad film, but it's not. It's not good enough, or not bad enough to be a great bad film. It's a mediocre film, which is more insulting. So damn it, I was hoping for something worse, and they never got it. So 2004, another Wolfgang Petersen film. This was him at his peak boringness. So it's Troy. Another one, the Trojan Wars, 10 years, right? No, it was about 10 months in this film. Why? Who knows? Why is all the mythological stuff taken out? Who knows? Why is it so tedious and miscast? Who knows? Again, one of those films that is boring more than bad. Like, everyone's trying, everyone's being professional, but you've got actors who should be good at the parts being mediocre. Like Brian Cox is Agamemnon, who should have been great in this part, but he's boring. Brad Pitt is way too old to play Achilles, and he's trying his best, but he's miscast. The only person coming out of this one is Eric Bana. He's the only one that seems properly cast. Everyone else is terrible or mediocre, and the film just drags on when it should be flying. This film should be flying. So many subplots that should have been great aren't. You know, it's like there's so much there that should have been outstanding, and it's just bad direction and bad writing. It's like one of the classic tales. How to be a film that's boring from it? They found a way. And the runner-up is Alien vs Predator, another one that's like the last time it's one of the most watchable ones in this list, but it is incredibly mediocre. It was it came after Alien Resurrection, where the Alien franchise had started to collapse, and it came after Predator 2. And this one was meant to bring life back to the series for both of them. Well, and both of them just split apart again, did their own thing, and they're both doing okay. But this one, the second one's objectively worse, but the second one has a bad movie charm. This one is just boring. But it is watchable, but so many scenes are just tedious, and it's like, wow, this is not good. This is really not good. So that's that one. It's just blah. Why should having an Alien Predator film in blah is pretty dispiriting. So 2005 is Brothers Grimm. Terry Gilliam. This was the first real sign that he'd lost it. It was a studio film through the Weinsteins, and it was just boring as hell. But then Gilliam would go off and make other films that were more independent, but also as boring as hell as this one. It was just like he just lost it completely. And Terry Gilliam doing a Brothers Grimm film, that should be exciting. Instead, it's just boring. So, yeah. Another one where all the material they had. I mean, Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters years later did roughly the same film. And they did it much better because they knew it was cheesy. They understood in their bones this is a cheesy film. Which Brothers Grimm never managed to pull off. And Fantastic Four is the runner-up. The Chris Evans one from Fox is the first attempt at Fantastic Four. It's boring. It's terrible. Blah. You know, that's what, you leave that film going blah. They don't even have a proper ending. They just have a weird little fight at the end. It's like, that's it. 2006, another comic book movie is X-Men Last Stand. Lots of decent ideas. Matthew Vaughn developed it. Then he left, and Brett Ratner came in, and it ended up with a film that was portraying itself as a big conclusion to the X-Men saga, and it ends up being boring in every scene. So many deaths happen you don't care about. So many things happen is like they feel very unmotivated, and it's like should have just left this until you were ready to go, rather than try to force something, because this is just a boring film. And The Omen, the runner-up. Anyone remember the Omen remake? Exactly. No one remember. I don't even like the original that much, but the remake is boring as hell. Again, a lot of good actors in a film that has no ambition, and it's mediocre at the most because there's just nothing here. It's so unmemorable. 2007, Elizabeth the Golden Age is the most mediocre one because it had a good original film. The director come back, the actors come back, they had Clive Owen in support. This should have been a banger. Instead, you had difficulty staying awake during it. And it's like, it's such great material and they just did nothing with it. It was an incredible snooze. And the runner-up is Ghost Rider. The Nicolas Cage movie. Another one of the ones you think's really bad. In fact, it's just mediocre. In its bones, every little thing is mediocre. That's why it feels worse than it is, because every little bit of it is boring. That's why you're going, oh god, just please make this end soon. Right, 2008, we've got 2008 now. Body of Lies, the Ridley Scott DiCaprio film that you probably have forgotten existed. There's a reason why. It literally takes one of the most interesting subjects, which is spies in the Middle East, and makes it tedious. It makes it generic to every conspiracy film you've ever seen. It's astonishingly tedious for what should have been a really interesting film. It blew my mind how boring a film could be with this subject. So yeah, it was a epitome of mediocre. And the runner-up is Hancock. That should have been the winner, but Body of Lies picked at the post. Hancock is a cynical superhero film before these things became like the norm. But this was how you don't do it. You basically you cast Will Smith, who can't really do cynicism very well, and he's too busy trying to be likeable. And then the second half to try and make him likeable, even though he's a total scumbag in the first half. It's so compromised in every possible way, and the second half is a bunch of fights that mean nothing, and it's like it's meant to be a thing between this ex-couple who are fighting again, and they're both superheroes, and it's so tedious. It puts you to sleep. 2009 are two sequels that are both tedious as hell. Transformers 2, I can't remember which one it is. Revenge of the Fallen, I can't remember the title. There's quite a lot. The early Michael Bay ones have fun little fights, but you have Shia LaBeouf in the centre of them being an incredibly boring protagonist, and you have a plot that doesn't make any sense and is tedious to watch. And you get an odd action scene, you think, oh, that's well done, and then nothing for ages, and the finale goes on forever, and you're like looking at your watch thinking, is this over yet? It's incredibly mediocre, and again, that's why it feels so, bad, because you're just bored. Runner-up, Twilight 2. Twilight was pretty boring, but Twilight 2 took the cake for just wandering around doing nothing for like forever. So that's why I'd say it's the most boring. So I did not have much fun with this one. I'm glad to never see it again. I've never actually finished the Twilight films. I saw the third one and I gave up after that point. It was like, I know I'm doing this for a laugh, but these films are not funny enough. Right, 2010, Prince of Persia. Anyone remember this film? Jake Gyllenhaal playing a Prince of Persia. Yes. And not casting you get away with now. It's so boring. It goes on and on and on, and there's all these scenes that are meant to be charming and interesting, and it's just boring. It's just tedious, and you want your life to end when you're watching it. So it's pretty mediocre, mainstream mediocre. And the runner-up is Alice in Wonderland. The director liked Tim Burton, but he made a really boring Alice in Wonderland. Lots of CGI, but at least there are a few Tim Burton touches within the mediocrity. Unlike Prince of Persia, which had Mike Newell, who's a good director, utterly swamped by the mediocrity of this film. 2011, I'm going through these quicker now because there's only so much you can say about certain films. Like, this is in this category. Right, number 2011, Fright Night remake. Anyone remember this one? David Tennant's the villain, Anton Yelchin. It's boring as hell. The original is not amazing. It gets a good reputation, but it's not amazing, but it's fun. This one's not fun. This one just wanders all over the place and is just dull. And the runner-up is Pirates of the Caribbean 4. This is after Gore Verbinski left, and this was like the weakest of the films because it was Fountain of Youth one, and it just went on, and there was not much going on, and it was just like a lot of scenes. There were some scenes that were good, but overall it was a real lack of direction, and then the script just felt like it was all over the place. So yeah, it's the one of the Pirates film you really want to avoid. The fifth one's a lot more fun. It's not great, but it's a lot more fun than this. 2012, the Total Recall remake. It's the one you wish you could forget via Recall. Colin Farrell in a Len Wiseman film. It took what should have been a fascinating idea of taking the Total Recall idea and putting a normal guy in it rather than Schwarzenegger. Instead, you get lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of action. And that's just the first half. The second half has even more lots and lots and lots of action. There's no interest in the ideas at all. It's just more and more action at all times. And most of it's ridiculous and terrible and it's just bland. It's dull where the first one had with a sense of humour and kept going and had lots of weird ideas. This one has no ideas and just is tedious. The runner-up is Amazing Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield starring reboot. It's not Garfield's fault, it's just a tedious script. It was retelling the story you've already seen like 8 or 9 years ago. It wasn't needed. There's a film it wasn't needed, so yeah. 2013 now. World War Z. Another one like, yeah, that was really fun, isn't it? The Brad Pitt starring film. There's lots of problems, lots of reshoots. It did okay ultimately, but it was try and remember anything that happened in it. They run around a lot, getting chased by zombies. It costs a fortune. No one remembers anything about it. Mediocrity, complete waste of money. The runner-up is Monsters University. They sold the sequel to Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. was a very good film. Monsters University, the prequel, managed to be really boring with the characters and make you wish you were doing anything but watch this film. It was like it and Cars were the two films. It was like, oh, Pixar's going downhill. Right, 2014, The Rock's Hercules. Another one is like you watch it and you go, God, this is boring. This is a sign of what things to come with The Rock. The Rock's always had lots of mediocre films, but he used to have some good ones in between. Now the budgets went higher, and the ideas went lower, and you know he's working hard to make Will Smith look edgy. And the runner-up is I, Frankenstein, which was the winner until I realised the Hercules film was released that year. It's Aaron Eckhart playing the Frankenstein monster, going through time. You'd think that could be interesting, this monster, and he doesn't die, but no, they make it an action movie. They give him some scars, but he still makes sure he looks good looking. It totally misses Frankenstein idea. It's Frankenstein name only, so to hell with that film. 2015, Star Wars: The Force Awakens. I can only include one of the new Star Wars in here, and this one is just a dull, soulless remake of the original Star Wars. That's it. At least Last Jedi annoyed people, and Rise of Skywalker was so stupid it was funny. This one was just boring. I was just bored through them all at this one. It's just a bad, boring, mediocre film that I thought was incredibly painful to sit through. I've tried to re-sit through it, and it still comes across as boring. Right, and the runner-up is Pixels, Adam Sandler movie. Yeah, the one about the fighting the video games. It should have been a lot of fun. It was boring. Enough said. 2016, Jason Bourne, the Bourne Identity regroup. You know, after the Bourne Legacy, Jeremy Renner one, they brought Matt Damon back to make a film that was incredibly tedious and hard to sit through and had no pod momentum, no nothing. Everyone just watched and went, "This is what we were waiting for." It's also one of those stupid films that actually kind of retcon certain things in the early films, or adds some more to the early films that apparently add character, but just makes the whole series seem a lot stupider. It's one of those kind of films, you know, Prometheus, that kind of thing. Yeah, and the runner-up is Inferno, the Tom Hanks film from Ron Howard. Yep, that's the second Ron Howard film in this list. It's just all of these films were boring, but this one is incredibly boring. I mean, and it has the most obvious twist at the end, and which you could spot a mile away. I mean, Da Vinci Code was incredibly boring, but I think this one actually topped it. I never thought it was possible. So as I left the Da Vinci Code movies for this one. 2017, we have Justice League, the Joss Whedon cut, where it was all reshot and redone, and it turned out to be a really boring film. You see the Zack Snyder version, it's a much better film, and I'm not defending Zack Snyder, he's made some trash as well, but his version of this film was much better. This one was boring, and was mediocre. It wasn't bad, it was mediocre, that's why it's on the list. It just felt bad because it was so mediocre that you just felt like getting the hell out of there. And it was trying so hard to be funny and was never funny. And it managed to be out of Dark Tower, which was another mediocre film that everyone thought was awful. In fact, it was just mediocre. It was nothing offensively bad, but it was based on material that should have been a lot better. Now they're going to go back and redo the material with Mike Flanagan, and hopefully that'll do it right. But this one is just a dull film. 2018 Tomb Raider reboot. Remember that one? It was only a few years ago, but we've mostly forgotten about it already. They're already rebooting this after this film. Yeah. It's based on the fun new reboot games of Tomb Raider. The Tomb Raider purists don't like the new games, but I love the new games. But this is an adaptation of it, and it's boring as hell. And the director of it made The Wave, which is excellent. And then he get thrown into this film with a terrible script, and it was like, there you go. and the runner-up is Bohemian Rhapsody. A biopic of Queen and Freddie Mercury should never be this mediocre. It should never be this boring. The only reason why it's not top of the list is Tomb Raider felt especially hard to sit through, and this one just felt mediocre and disappointing, and an offence to the material, but not quite as mind-numbing as Tomb Raider. 2019, The Lion King remake. What else could it be? The live-action Lion King remake that was just like a soulless version of the original. What else could be the most mediocre film that made you angry? Because it wasn't a bad film, it was just mediocre. It was just, there was nothing like here. And Jon Favreau, director, who'd done a lot of fun films, so it made it even worse. It was like someone you thought might find something in material to make it interesting, and then he failed completely. Runner-up is Terminator Dark Fate, which is an annoying film. It does a lot of horrible plot twists. But the main thing I take away from this film is how dull most of it was, how hard to sit through most of it was, especially in the second half when they're doing all these action scenes that are so uninvolving, and all these twists are so uninvolving. It's just like the actual intense mediocrity of every decision they make post the early bad decision is what makes this feel horrible. It's just, and that's the thing, that's why some people like it, because it is mediocre, but it's mediocre in a way they like. The people who hate it realise it's very mediocre in a way they hate. We're not fighting about good or bad here, we're fighting about mediocre here. Apart from that early horrible twist. Right, 2020, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. We're now on to number 3. This was very boring. They've relied on Jim Carrey to do lots of face pulling to get through it. The James Marsden is a human touch, and he's always an underrated actor. And they put him in Sonic the Hedgehog, which should be good, but they're writing so boring. So no matter, everyone's trying, but there's nothing there. There's just nothing. It's so lame, everything they're doing. So it's incredibly mediocre, which, again, some people don't seem to mind it. Same with the Lion King remake. It's like, people seem to be okay, or the Star Wars. Sometimes people like mediocre, and it drives other people mad. And the runner-up is Birds of Prey. Now, this basically list comes during the lockdown, so there wasn't much release, so Birds of Prey is incredibly mediocre DCU film. It's not terrible, but it isn't that interesting. It's like, yeah. There wasn't much choice. It probably would never have made the list if it wasn't for the fact there wasn't much left. It felt like it was a film that had been butchered by the studio, and it didn't feel like a film made by a director. I felt the director was told to remake certain bits, and there was lots of fight scenes that weren't quite right, and it's just meh. It felt like a studio hodgepodge, which makes it feel very mediocre. Right, 2021, Coming to America, the streaming-only sequel to Coming to America. Now, Coming to America has a 2 on it. The sequel to John Landis' film. No one talks about this film. It's like, it happened, and we'll go back and watch the original, and we'll know this film ever existed. That's how mediocre it is. Nobody cares. No one, as soon as everyone's interested in it until the week it was released, and then no one ever talked about it again. It was like, nope, didn't happen. Speaking of which, Space Jam: The New Legacy is the runner-up. Another one exactly the same. I'm a big Looney Tunes fan. I hated the first Space Jam. This one's not as bad as the first one, but it's still incredibly mediocre. It's trying to be postmodern, but it comes across as smug and uninvolving, and it's just awful corporate work that just dulls your mind. 2022, Jurassic Park Dominion. You know, the latest Jurassic Park film. Blah. It's like, it's a bunch of plots that didn't link up, but they just squashed them together. So that every plot you just felt bored watching, and all the actors looked bored, and it just droned on, and none of the scenes had any life to them. Everything felt like it come from an earlier film. Even some scenes where the dinosaurs are wrecking some streets and things in Rome. Nothing's there. Nothing. I don't know if it was Walter, but there's nothing interesting. Even in there's scenes that could be interesting. It's just like a lifeless film. And It beat out Wakanda Forever, which is another very lifeless film, a very boring film, very smug film, which is a runner-up. This one I'd probably watch Jurassic Park Dominion before we watch this one again. But this one is incredibly tedious. But I think Jurassic Park was more intensely mediocre, which is why it won. But this one has very little going on. I mean, the only thing it has going for it is Namor's not so bad, the villain. That's again why it kind of stepped up a bit from Jurassic Park, but not much though. The rest of the film is incredibly mediocre. It has a problem with the lead actor from the last film died, and the way of replacing them is that every bad decision you can make, every boring decision you can make, they made it. 2023, this one's obvious. Indiana Jones 5, or The Dial of Destiny. Dull, uninvolving, meandering plot. Try to stay awake through it. It's just dull. And the runner-up is Expendables 4, which is another Expendables film that has terrible special effects. That's why it's not Indiana Jones 5, because you can have fun with how bad the effects are. But every plot twist is predictable, everything is dull as hell. Really. There's nothing new here. But it has a bit more fun than Indiana Jones 5, because at least the actors are trying to make it fun, even if they don't mind any real material to do so. The Marvels could have made it on, but it wasn't so insane in certain places. It was another film that was pretty boring, but also had insanity, so it didn't get me this list. But no, 2024, both the films I hate most were incredibly mediocre, which made me hate them. So number one is Borderlands. It's the most boring film. That's why it's one of the worst films of the year. It's so intensely boring. That's probably the reason I did this list, to rant about Borderlands again. It's incredibly boring. It's miscast. It drags on and on and on and on. And Argyle gets in this list because it's terrible in lots of ways and decisions, but it's also incredibly dull to sit through. It's painfully dull because every scene is stuff you've seen before, and you're ahead of the characters every point of the way, and you're so bored watching it. It becomes painful. Both of these films are incredibly painful how mediocre they actually are. They're not bad in that incompetent way. They're mediocre in that terrible way that makes you want to lose your... It's Scanner's exploding head time, or the Fury exploding body time with these two films. So I hope you enjoyed this list of films you should avoid, because you're probably going to get bored with them and think they're going to be bad films, and in fact they're just... The reason why they feel so bad is because they're so tedious. They're so incredibly tedious. So I hope this was a nice little corrective to the list that Rodin made. You know, no, a real man finds the mediocre in life, not the excellence. I hope you enjoy this. Bye for now.